I'm sure when they get the invoice, they'll email me back.
Okay. How do I stop the recording here? Here we go.
No secret.
So,
oh God.
use your conversations wisely, my friends. All right, so, all right. Hello and welcome to Washington Metropolitan Chapter Community Association Institute's Mask Making Party. We, with our public outreach committee, have challenged our members to make masks this year to support our charity partners, the Ronald McDonald House at Inova Fairfax Hospital and Still Brave Childhood Cancer Foundation here in Northern Virginia and the DC metro area. These two partners we have done events with and done programs with over the last couple years. And in this pandemic environment, we are not able to be with them in person. And so we want to support them in this way. Of course, Ronald McDonald House provides housing and support for families when their children are inpatient at the hospital. And Still Brave Childhood Cancer Foundation is a local organization here founded by Tom Mitchell to provide support and help to families when their children are fighting the biggest life of their life. Still Brave takes on the other fights and provides support and programming for the entire family. So we thank Ronald McDonald House and Still Brave for all they do and are continuing to do today. So today here at our mask making party, we are just going to have a little fun and we're going to learn some things. So first of all, I want to thank our mask making contest sponsor, Heritage Landscaping. And of course, we here at the chapter, we like a little bit of competition. And so we have a prize for the member who donates the most masks to this effort. So that prize, a gift card, has been donated by TRC Engineering. So thank you to both Heritage Landscaping and TRC for their support of this program. Today we have with us two mask making extraordinaires. We have James Kelley with DMA Reserves, a very active member here at our chapter, and his friend Diane Evans, who comes to us from Florida. And we are especially grateful, Diane, that you were here today, as I know you were still cleaning up from your visit with Hurricane Sally earlier this week. And so an extra thank you for joining us today. I'm going to turn it over to James. We get right back into this. We're going to learn how to make a mask with a sewing machine for those of us who are crafty enough to do so. And then the rest of us who aren't quite, as skilled with the sewing machine, we will learn how to make one without the need of that machine. So James, take it away, and please, everybody, unmute yourself and chit chat, and let's have a good time today.
James, unmute yourself.
There we go. Okay. Now, first off, I'm going to soon turn this over to Diane, where she's going to show you the sewing machine techniques and the stuff that she has used since March and the things that she's developed, because Diane has done a lot of research into what makes the best mask for the right person, for the right job. Different jobs require different masks. And then I'll show you a technique that I found on the web for just a simple pull it together, throw it over your ears and go type mask, cut and go. The one that I'm going to show you also can be hand stitched around the edge if you want a little more permanent, so that it'll last a little longer and won't unravel. First off, I'd like to talk to Diane a little bit about the type of material that one should use for masks. It is my understanding that straight weave cotton is probably the best also known as quilting material, but it's a straight type of cotton, straight weave cotton. Let me bring one over, that has a weave, and you notice it's not really stretchy, not at all. Now, all cloth has a weave, It's called, and so you can see where the threads cross each other in the weave of the fabric. So if you look at it diagonally and you fold it across where the weave is doing this, then that's called folding it on the bias. So if you go diagonally across the weave, that's called on the bias. And that's going to be kind of important because some of these masks you want to fold on the bias to make them stretch correctly, because straight weave cotton doesn't stretch with the thread, but it will stretch across the bias a little bit and give you a little bit of give there. So that's what some of the mask techniques call for, is making sure you know how your cloth is woven and which way stretches. Okay, I just wanted to cover that a little bit. What other kind of tips should we give them before we get started, Diane?
Okay, if you don't know what quilting cotton is, go to any fabric store and say, I want quilting cotton, and they will show you. The advantage of the quilting cotton is it comes in so many different colors and so many different designs, and it will encourage people to wear a mask. I have embroidered some masks that look like shark teeth. The kids love those. They're baby sharks suddenly. We'll talk about that a little bit if you, do any of you have an embroidery machine? Any hands raised? All right, well, yeah. The only cloth that is better than quilting cotton is called halyard. This is a mask made out of halyard material. Halyard is used in hospitals. After they autoclave surgical tools, it's wrapped in this blue material and taken to the operating room. At that point, a nurse unwraps everything and they throw this away. This is the only thing better than cotton. You can get it for free from hospitals, and many hospitals have begun giving it away for making masks. And you can see it's very lightweight, it fits very well, and it's almost as good as a N95 mask. So again, don't ever pay for the halyard material. Just contact, if you have friends that are nurses or work in a hospital, ask them if their hospital is giving it away. Several hospitals in Atlanta were just giving it away if you promise to bring masks back. So that's the only other thing I have to say. Just make sure you're using good quilting cotton so that it doesn't let things in.
Right, or out.
Or out.
And that's another thing we want to talk about is, you know, how this aerosolizes and how your spit particles and stuff interact with the mask.
You know, I heard a really good example on Facebook the other day. I just love it. If you and another person are standing next to each other and you're naked and the guy urinates, it's going to get on both of you. If you have clothing on, you'll get a little wet. But if both of you have clothing on and he urinates, he just feels warm and wet, and you're fine. That's why we need the mask. It's a great way to think of it, okay?
Yep. Now, one thing that we can talk about is a quilting cotton versus knit cotton, like a t-shirt. Now, quilting cotton, you know, it has some body to it and it has some form. Once you fold it, it won't wrap itself to your face. Right. Knit cotton, like t-shirts, you pull it across your ears, it's going to wrap your face. And it'll get very close to your nostrils, and you can probably aerosolize right through it. So that's why I am just ignoring all of the patterns that call for knitted cotton and saying, no, if it's a pattern that I can't use with quilting cotton, I'm not going to use it. I just don't believe it's as safe.
And I agree. In my Dropbox that you all should have got a link to, there is one pattern that can be used for t-shirt, but it could also be used for just cotton, and it's a no-sew mask. It's probably real similar to what James is going to show.
Right.
And again, you all should have got that information in the Dropbox. I included several patterns I got off of the internet. The Berta one was originally written in Swedish, so it'll be a little funny when you read part of it. There's another one from a hospital that has way too much information, but it's good information in it. I didn't use the pattern out of there, but it has other good information about masks. There's one for the no-sew mask, and then there's just a note that I wrote out. Most of what I'll be talking about today is in that, so you don't have to worry too much about taking notes. Your turn, James.
Okay, well, I mean, that's basically what we're going to be doing today and kind of discussing. The list of stuff that you need is on a lot of the material that we did. I will say, for doing this, you're going to need some pins. Now, whether you use just straight old, straight pins or dressmaker's pins or whatever, that's fine. If you are going to be using stitch witchery, which I'm going to talk about later, these dressmaker pins with the plastic heads will melt. So it's better to use just plain old straight pins like you get out of a dress shirt or something.
And if you don't want to use pins, because pins can leave holes in the mask,
right,
use a binder clip.
Mm-hmm.
There's really fancy clips that they sell in the stores, but you're all working in an off supply closet. Grab some binder clips. I love binder clips. I miss working. I have to buy my own now.
So I'm going to turn it over to Diane and let her show you some of the techniques, and then we'll come back and I'll show you some of mine.
Okay. So this is, I've just told you this is a halyard mask. This is called a duck bill because when you wear it, you look like a duck. So the halyard, if you want to make these in the drop box, there's instructions for it, and it's really easy to make, real quick. Somebody's selling me auto insurance, just a second. Or the extended warranty, somebody's selling me that. I get them every day. Okay, so the advantage to these are they're very safe, very well protect you, and they're very lightweight. This one has ties on it, has ribbon ties. You notice the ties are really long. That's because when I gave them away, I did not know what size ties people would need that got them. So now they can just tie it up here, tie it down around your neck, and cut off the excess. So I'm not going to show how to make those because all the instructions are in there, and people are less likely to think they're cute. So we're going to look at this one. This is a pleated mask. It has a nose piece in it. It goes around the neck, around the ears, and over the chin. Be sure that your masks cover your nose, your mouth, and under your chin. For the beams, we're going to see how to make one of these. You start with a piece of, figure out which one. You start with 2 pieces of fabric. These happen to be 6 by 9 inches. That works for most adults. If you want to make these for children, you can cut them smaller. I made some for preschool kids that were 4 by 6 inches because those little kids, they need it too. For the smallest ones, I did not put a nose piece in them. I sewed these together on the top and on the bottom. Now I used my fancy serger. As I mentioned earlier, I have 4 sewing machines, each that does a different thing. I have 6, but 4 that I have up and running. But you sew it with the right sides together. You should be able to tell the difference between the right to the wrong side of the fabric. Anybody have problems with that? If I use a term you don't know, just ask. Most of us are familiar with that idea. And I sewed the top and the bottom together. You can do it with a sewing machine. You can do it with a serger. You can do it with a needle and thread. It just takes a few minutes. If you're doing a needle and thread, about every 3 stitches, you want to take a little back stitch, go backwards a little and come up so that it's tight. If you just sew straight across, it's not going to be a very tight stitch. You turn it right side out. And then you put in a nose piece on one side of this. Nose pieces can be a million things. In the notes I gave, you have ideas of what to use. I have a lot of pipe cleaners because at one time that's all I had was pipe cleaners. Yeah, we'll get to that. That's size 20 or 16. Do you know? James doesn't know what size. He's talking to us without talking to us. James has no voice.
I try not to. I've been using 12 gauge, but I'm doubling it.
Okay. Yeah, 12 is kind of thin. So
I
that
tried 10
wire,
gauge, and that's far too.
that wire you can get in a craft store, usually in the floral section, or at your hardware store. Our little Ace here in Bristol, and if you don't know where Bristol, Florida is, we are 30 miles from the nearest Walmart and 50 miles from Target. So it gives you an idea how rural we are. Our county has 9,000 square miles and 9,000 residents. There are apartment complexes in Virginia that have more than 9,000 residents in one apartment complex, right? So anyhow, our Ace Hardware had that. Before we knew that Ace Hardware had that wire, we were using the pipe cleaners. And I fold the pipe cleaner in half and then tuck the ends under so they're not poking out through the fabric. And you just put that on one side of this, and I've got it right up against the edge. Now, this is going to fall out if you just leave it there. So I'm going to sew a single line.
And again, you can do it with needle and thread.
Yep, needle and thread with the back stitch.
And don't be intimidated by doing hand stitching because it'll go a lot faster than you think. And you can sit there and watch your favorite television show while you're doing this.
Yeah, you can make one by hand in 15 minutes. And that's not really that much slower than me using my machine. Okay, so there you go. It's not going to fall out. It's not going to slip down your nose and into your mouth when you least expect it. Now, this is called a pleated mask because we pleat it to fit around our face. To pleat the mask, you're going to grab the mask about, you can see it, about an inch from the bottom. And when I say about an inch, that means about. Don't feel like you have to get out a tape measure. And just fold a pleat there. You don't want the pleat to leave. Try to find my pins here. So you pin it in place. And your first pleat's down there. Now do it again and have the second pleat about at the top of that first pleat.
So you just keep folding it right after the other.
Yeah, just
one right after the other.
2 pleats is all you need. It just needs to be able to expand to fit on your face. So there you go. I've got 2 pleats there. They're both pinned into place. And I'm usually more careful about getting the pins towards the edge rather than in the middle. And now I'm going to sew these pleats into place. Once again, you can do this with a needle and thread. You don't have to have my fancy sewing machine.
And
go ahead, James.
well, honestly, some of this can be done by stitch witchery, you might think, but it doesn't have the strength to withstand some of the pulling that these masks are going to have. So that's why stitch witchery will only be good for certain binding things. It won't be as good as a seam.
Can you explain what stitch witchery is in case anyone
Oh,
doesn't
sure.
know?
I'm sorry.
Glue.
Stitch witchery is a fabric bonding material. You put it in between 2 pieces of cotton and then basically steam and melt it so it's a fused material together. You can get pretty heavy duty stitch witchery, but for something as important as a mask, even if you do use this stuff instead of stitching, I'd still, on the heavy parts here where things are pulling on it, I'd still put at least 2 or 3 hand stitches in there to keep it from giving.
Right. And stitch witchery is available many places. If you
Oh,
go
yeah.
to your local grocery store, I don't know what grocery stores you have there, they generally have a little end cap, or sometimes in the middle of your
Yep.
household item with some stuff on it. You can get needles and pins and cheap thread, really cheap thread. I mean, really cheap thread.
Yeah.
And they will have stitch witchery there.
Right.
So now I'm taking the pins out. And at this point, you can iron it if you want. I don't always iron them. Depends on how much time I have. But if you iron them, then the pleats look nice and solid, nice and sharp. I understand that people today often don't own irons. They're not old like us. Yeah.
That's astonishing to me, but you know, hey.
Yeah, it is. It's really astonishing. But you've just about got your mask done now. You need to fold the edges down. On this particular one, I finished the edge with my serger just because I have a serger. But fold the edges over twice so that any unsewn edge is underneath. So I've sewn it down, I've folded it down twice. And then sew the edge. Once again, when I say sew, it just means with your machine or by needle and thread. You have a nice finished edge. Trying to talk nice to my machine here. And there you go, you've got it put together. But now you ask, how is it going to stay on my face? Obviously, I'm not going to glue it there. So what you need is elastic or ties. For ties, you can use ribbon. Okay, and like for this one, I told you I put long ribbons on. You can sew pieces of ribbon here and again here. And I hate extra threads. Excuse me here while I cut them. And so you can just sew the ribbons on. If you're using elastic, do a loop that comes around. And the loop, show you this side. You see where the loop on this is. I just sewed the two pieces down, the two ends down. How long to make this loop? You decide that yourself. I find about 8 inches, sometimes 9 inches. Now, instead of elastic, this is actually yarn. It's a special kind of yarn that is used or made out of t-shirt material. So it has quite a bit of stretch in it. That's very comfortable. Now, where do you get this kind of yarn? You put out a plea on the Quill Makers group and say, hey, we can't find, or the Mask Makers group, we can't find elastic anywhere. And that was March or April. By April, United States was sold out of elastic, period. There was nothing. And someone said, I've got this crafty yarn that I was going to make something out of, and I never did. Would you like it? And we got 15 skeins of this yarn that is just like soft elastic for free.
And mentioning elastic, I'm glad you brought that up, Diane.
Oh.
I bought quite a bit in March of this inelastic material. It hurts like hell.
Yes, it does.
So that's why I still have a lot left, because I quit using it. I went somewhere with something over my ears one day. It was an outdoor funeral. I almost had to leave because I was constantly doing this, trying to get comfortable. It was painful. So that's why I advocate ties.
Okay.
Ribbon ties.
I've got 2 solutions for you, James, okay? First of all is you're using a very wide elastic because at the time you bought it, that's all there was.
Right.
1/4 inch and 3/8 inch are better. They're thinner and easier on the ears, but the
Well,
best.
this is This is about a 1/4 of an inch, actually.
Oh, no, that's 1/2 inch. Give me a break. Measure it.
Okay.
I always astound people because I can tell 1/4, 3/8, and 1/2 just by eyeing it. You see?
Nope, Diane, this is a 1/4.
Oh,
I think my camera's making it look bigger than it actually is.
That could be
Yep.
your camera. Yeah, okay, it looks, yeah.
So,
Looking
yeah,
at my hand,
the
I can tell
tiny
you.
elastic is supposed to be better, but that still hurt.
So first solution is, and this is included in my notes, a place called Atwood Rope, ATWOOD. Now, Atwood Rope specialized in paracord and bungee cords. People started taking apart bungee cords for the elastic, and Atwood Rope says, we have a great idea. Let's sell elastic just for masks. And they sell a round elastic that is very soft. I would show you some, but apparently I used the last of it. And I haven't ordered any. I will be ordering some more when we're done with this. I just discovered this morning, and I go, ah! And it's a very good price. I think it's in my. I have it in my notes how much it is. It comes in many colors, and it's very soft and comfortable. The other solution is to take a piece of 1/2 inch elastic, yay long, and put a button on each end, put it across the back of your head, and attach the elastic from the mask to that. It's called an ear saver.
Mm-hmm.
You make ear savers, or if you use, I haven't found anyone that makes as soft and elastic as Atwood Rope. And they are a company that started making millions because of masks. Okay, so now if you want to use ribbon or other things to ties, this is how to get it in. Remember, we just doubled this over. I have a crochet hook. And I'm going to put the crochet hook through, and ta-da.
Now you can put that through before you fold it over.
Oh, that's too much trouble.
But that's just so much trouble.
Because if you do it before you fold it over, you might end up sewing.
Right.
And you can't pull this through.
Safety pin to pull it through, right?
What's
Right.
that?
You can also use a safety pin to pull it
You
through.
can, but the crochet hook is so easy. Go over to Walmart. You get a crochet hook for around $1 at Walmart. Just make sure it's a smaller one, E or F. What size is this? Oh, that's a silver 00, so it's the same as a C. So just a smaller one. And then what I do is I make a knot in it to the length I want it and pull it back through. Now there's no knot bothering anyone, and you can see where that all could have done with a needle and thread. You don't need anything besides a needle and thread. But sewing machines are fun. I've been sewing since I was 4 years old, and I'm retired, so it's more than 60 years. My first sewing machine I learned on was originally a treadle machine that had a little engine put on it. And I just loved it. It sewed straight stitches. That's all I needed. I only sewed it through my fingernail once. My mother wasn't happy. I never did that again until about a year ago.
Oh, no.
Oh, and let me tell you, putting an embroidery machine through your finger, that hurts.
Yeah.
It broke off inside my finger. Only way to get it out is with a pair of pliers. And I'm out here in my she shed, and my husband is inside. And my husband, by the way, is blind. He's been blind since he was 12 years old. And I just go running in, holding my finger and saying, I need pliers, I need pliers. It was crazy. All right, so that's all it took to make this. Before I give them away, I put a little ding in the nose piece so people know where the nose piece is. Took me no time at all to make that. Now I made this with 2 pieces of material. I did not put a filter in it. And there's a lot of debate as to whether or not you need a filter. I generally choose not to put a filter in because it's a pain. If you choose to put a filter in, you can do that. A filter can be a 3rd piece of material. It can be interfacing material, if you know what interfacing is. A friend of mine, I don't know if you know Minnie Schuler. You know Minnie Schuler, don't you, Jim?
Taught me algebra.
Yeah, she taught everybody in the area algebra. And Minnie Schuler uses coffee filters. People started looking at her funny when she started buying coffee filters by the thousands.
I use HEPA vacuum cleaner filters.
That
And you
works
can,
too.
and those are layered, so you can make them as thick or as thin as you want. But sometimes it's a little difficult to breathe through that. So I've learned to take out some of the plastic filtering part of that HEPA filter and put, you know, the lower grade stuff in, using that as my filter. It sometimes works, and that's completely up to you, whether you use the filter or not.
Right. You know, kind of the debate is that with a mask, just like I made, you're filtering out 70%. You put a HEPA filter in, you might get 80% filtered
Right.
out. Is it worth it? That's your own decision.
Right. And that's why I like to advocate making masks and teaching people how to cut a filter so that it can be placed inside a mask. You know, a mask should have a place for a filter pot, you know, some sort of pocket or something for a filter.
Right. And what I often do to put a filter pocket in is I use 2 pieces for the back and overlap them. And then you overlap them, and it doesn't change anything except that if you're doing this by hand, you have 2 pieces that you have to put a finished edge on.
Right.
So you overlap them, and you've got filter pocket automatically there, and it looks the same from the front. Any questions about this one? Yes, no? Lots of silent people out there.
Okay.
If you have questions, if I'm going too fast or if I use a word you don't know, I will try hard not to, then ask on the chat feature. It's really easy. We do our church on Zoom right now, which is interesting. Okay. So we looked at that one. Now let's look at this one. This is a 2-piece, you'll see it sewn in the middle, a 2-piece fitted mask, and it fits a little better than the other one does. This one you can do again with a needle and thread. It's just going to be a little harder to do with a needle and thread than the other one. I've also seen patterns that are 1-piece, and I actually used that recently to make a Subway mask. Subway restaurant. And the woman I made it for, I went to Subway a couple days later for a sandwich. What else do you go to Subway for? And she was wearing it, and I just stood there and stared. I could not believe how good her mask looked. I made it out of black material and then the Subway colors, Subway going across the front, and it looked so good. She said her manager wanted some. I haven't got around to making them yet because then Sally came through. We had to prepare for Sally. We had to live through Sally. We have to clean up after Sally. Anyhow, Sally was a mess. It could have been worse though. You know, at one point we had 2 hurricanes at the same time coming towards us. And luckily Marco just died. Nobody knows why he died. I think it was because a lot of people in the South were praying. We did not need 2 hurricanes simultaneously. Okay. So this one we're going to sew. And I do it slightly different than the instructions say, but the instructions are in the Dropbox. So you have piece number 1, and you cut 2 pieces of that and have them right sides together. And you notice this big front curve seam, and that's what we're going to sew together. At the same
And that's
time,
the portion that goes from your nose under your chin.
right. And so this is piece number 2. And for piece number 2, I have an inner piece. This is an inner liner. It's a little bit smaller than the outer. And I have cut 2 pieces of interfacing. And this is just non-fusible interfacing. Fusible means you can iron it on. And the trouble with fusible flexible interfacing is harder to breathe through, and you might have chemicals that you don't want to be breathing all day. Oh, I should also mention while we're talking about this is if you're wearing masks all day at work, teaching, whatever, you should have 3 or 4 masks and change them out every 2 hours. I don't know if any of you have seen the staph infections that people are getting from masks, but it's pretty ugly. And you don't want a staph infection on your face. So just be smart, change your mask out every couple hours, or if you feel it getting really sweaty, change it out. And that night when you go home, wash them and dry them and get ready for the next day. That's your health tip for the day. Okay, so here's my fancy machine. And I'm going to sew all 3 of these at once. Now this machine is so fancy, I don't need a foot pedal for it. And I'm sewing a 1/4 inch seam. Now what's really funny is this is kind of a fancy machine, but I'm getting tired of it. I've had it for about 10 years and it's time to get a new one. So I told my husband I'm going to get a new one for Christmas. I'm paying off some other sewing stuff. Okay, so there we go. We've got all of these, the middle sewn. Now to make the front and the back stronger, I'm going to sew, here's the seam in the middle, that's the seam. I'm going to fold it down and just sew right down. Well, I'm going to do it from the outside. I'm going to sew right along that edge. I think the instructions tell you to sew both, to fold it open and sew both sides, but not me.
And it actually makes a stronger seam when you don't fold it over and sew on each side of the seam. When you fold it to one side and sew that all 3 pieces or 3 layers together, that actually creates a much stronger seam. So that's why Diane is doing it.
That's why I'm doing it, that's right. And it's a little hard to sew because it's curvy. So just take your time.
And don't think with a sewing machine, you have to always sew really, really fast. No, I've been doing it for almost as long as Diane, and I'm still really pokey with the machine because I like my seams to be almost perfect. So don't think you have to go fast.
This machine only has 1 speed, which is something that bothers me about it, and that's part of the reason.
I'm one of those people, I can't sew with a foot pedal with shoes on. I mean, my toes have to be curled around the end of that pedal because that's how I get, you know, that speed going just a little bit.
As I said, this doesn't have a foot pedal. It just has an on button. Okay, so here I've sewn this down, so now it's a stronger seam. Now, and once again, you can do this just by hand. Believe it or not, there was a time that the world didn't have sewing machines. If you've ever read the Little House books, like Who in America Hasn't, Laura got to use her first sewing machine when she was an adult. Now this inner one, I've got to fold the edges down to make a finished edge on the piece number 2. I talk to my machine sometimes.
Diane, are you folding the outside edges down and sewing them on the inside?
I don't know. Yeah, I fold it to the inside and sew it so I can see where I'm sewing.
Okay.
Since we're not in a beauty contest here, I just sew however I feel like sewing.
Of course.
We're not into this for beauty, we're into this for safety. So you see when I put these two together, the one overlaps. And now I'm going to take the liner I have and put that. So I now have 3 pieces together. And to be sure to stay lined up, I lined up all of those seams and put one of my fancy pins. If you do use a lot of pins, you really should get a magnetic pin cushion. If you don't want to get a magnetic pin cushion, go to Harbor Freight. You guys have Harbor Freights there, right?
Mm-hmm.
They sell magnetic, like an ashtray, but magnetic. I don't know. Do you guys even know what an ashtray is anymore? I get old sometimes. But they sell these for mechanics to have nuts and bolts and stuff in. And I've got 2 of those sitting around. They're just over by some of my other machines.
I used to glue magnets in a little bowl and just, throw the pins in the bowl, and they do perfectly.
Yeah. Yeah. Just have a magnet around.
You always want a magnet around when you're working with straight pins, because one spill and you'll wish you had one.
Yeah, I've even got, I don't see it right now. I've even got a reacher, a magnetic reacher, so when I drop pins, I can just pick them up. For those of you that didn't see a view of my she shed earlier, this is 10 feet by 20 feet, so a lot of my stuff is way at the other end. My husband offered me this for a wedding gift. Today is our 3rd anniversary, by the way.
Happy anniversary, Diane.
But on the other hand, we didn't do anything fancy because of COVID.
Nobody can.
Yeah. Hey, we went out to Po Folks yesterday.
That's better than going out down to the river.
That's right. Now we have the river in front of our house.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's a little drainage ditch that normally maybe gets an inch of water, and it was overflowing yesterday, or 2 days ago. And we have a chow chow that doesn't like to be outside in the rain, and had to bring him in. And it rained so long, we had to have him in for 2 days. And at 4 o'clock in the morning, he told us he had to go out, and I'm there. I've got pads in the bathroom. Just go use some pads. Leave me alone. And it wasn't, he wasn't peeing on the pee pads. I had to clean up afterwards. Chows can do a lot. We have 7 dogs, by the way, and they're all spoiled. Okay. Okay, so all I'm doing here is I sewed the bottom together, and now I'm going to sew the top together.
And this mask is 3 layers, not just 2, right, Diane?
That's what I made 3 layers, just
Okay.
because. For no particular reason other than instructions said to.
You can leave the second layer out, but
you don't
the
have
more
to-
layers, the more protection you have.
Right. Right. And we discussed that already.
Mm-hmm. And see, that's one reason why I don't recommend the handkerchief and, scarf
Oh,
and,
yeah. That's just 1 layer. No matter how you fold it, a handkerchief is only 1 layer.
Even if you double it, that's really just 1 layer. I mean, a handkerchief is such thin cotton.
Yeah.
It's just not.
Yeah, when I see people like that in the store, I just go down a different aisle. I don't trust them. Yeah. I'm kind of known in this town now for making masks, and if somebody's not making a mask, they'll go down or wearing a mask, they'll go down a different aisle. Okay, so there we go. this part that's over, we're gonna fold it twice and sew it down. Just like we did with the other mask. But the one thing I forgot, the nose piece. I do have other nose pieces. These are just easiest to use for this demonstration. I have the wires like James was showing, and you can now buy nose pieces on Amazon.
Oh, yeah, you can.
And I put it in the notes that I have in the Dropbox. When I looked at it was 100 pieces for $10 or something.
Ooh, that's a pretty. That's pretty good.
Price, yeah. I'd have to look it up again, but there are places to get nose pieces. And at one point, when we just had nothing else to use, I started using aluminum foil. The Dollar General, which is our equivalent to Walmart here, has aluminum foil sheets that are like tissue paper that you pull out. And I took one of those and folded it 8 or 10 times till it was really small, and we made a whole lot of masks with just those for nose pieces. You really need a nose piece, so no matter what kind of mask you have, because it's not going to fit on your face well without it.
Is that washable, the foil?
Actually, yeah.
Yeah.
It may take a while to dry. That's why, you know, the wire nose pieces that are made out of the craft wire, those are aluminum. And you know, you can throw those in the washer with the wire right in the mask, and it won't hurt anything, won't rust. That's the only real downfall with the pipe cleaners is they will rust.
Yes, the pipe cleaners will rust. The aluminum foil will hold up for a while, but you have so much fun making the masks that you just make more. I don't know how many masks I've got around here. I've got a whole box of the halyards that I haven't sewn together. Probably 300 of them still. But I sewed together several hundred already.
So thinking long term, what would you want to use for your nose piece?
Either the nose pieces you get at Amazon or the wires like James was showing.
Okay.
Yeah, craft wire. And if you can get 20 gauge craft wire, I couldn't at the time. The biggest I could get was 12 gauge.
Yeah.
You can always just fold it over and, you know, just use a double.
Yeah.
And that will hold up nicely. But the thinnest I would get would be 12. The 10, you bend that a few times and it'll just pop right in two. So, I mean, that's what, these are the old ones that are the 10 gauge, and they are just way too flimsy, you know, and I used mine about 10 times, and all of a sudden I had 2 nose pieces up there instead of 1 with some sharp edges. Not pretty.
There's my crochet hook. Yeah. The nice thing is that we're 6 months into this mask making ordeal, and things are available today that were not available in March and April. And like I said earlier, elastic, the country just sold out of elastic in April. And I belong to several quilting groups with tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people in them, and nobody was finding elastic. And then some of the group moderators got really ticked off at everybody talking about masks and banned masks being spoken of on their quilting groups. You know? No.
Yeah, that's why you formed the mask groups.
Yeah, that's what we did. And we formed the mask group because I asked, for those of you who were here earlier, that's how I started doing this, is I asked some of the people here, I asked some of the people in here in Bristol, what about masks? Are the homemade masks any good? And before you knew it, everybody was asking us to make masks, and a bunch of us got together and formed this group. And whether it was people like me making masks, or people just delivering masks, or people running supplies from one person to another, picking masks off my fence while I was quarantined, it really didn't matter. It was all, we all worked hard and worked together. And it was just an awesome, awesome thing.
And that's one thing, you know, if you have friends that can't make masks, enlist them to help you get supplies or disseminate the masks.
Or cut the fabric. I had people
You know, everybody can use a pair of scissors,
Yeah,
mostly.
I had people cutting fabric. I had people cutting ties. I had people running stuff back and forth, and somebody would need some stuff and, you know, put out a plea, and somebody would pick it up at one place and take it to another. So there you go. Once again, it didn't take very long. Even if you did this with a needle and thread, it would not have taken you very long, and you have your mask. And this one, my husband will wear. I threatened him with like a pink mask, and I'm not going to wear pink. I said, well, you're blind. How would you know it's pink? I'll ask someone.
Believe me, he wouldn't have to ask anyone. He would only need to go out the door.
That's right. Yeah. We have some masks that we got from Humana because I have Humana insurance. And when he put the Humana mask on, it went over his eyes. And I took a picture of it and put it on Facebook. It was so cute. See, a blind man gets completely covered. So, yeah, now you know Junior, don't you, James?
Oh, yes. Uh-huh.
Yeah. My husband is an awesome guy, and
He is.
he
I've known him since childhood.
yeah. He used to run a gray bar motel downtown, you know,
Mm-hmm.
where you could stay for 3 to 6 months.
That was the Snowbird Motel.
No, it was across the street where his jail
Oh, that's
is.
right. Yes, that's
Yes.
right.
Yeah, he called it the Gray Bar Motel. And what's really funny is he even treated the inmates as well as he treats anyone else. And today we will be in town. Like, we had a plumbing emergency at 2 o'clock in the morning, and one of his former inmates came and fixed it for us. So everybody loves Junior. All right, any more questions on what we did? I've shown you 3 masks, explained how you can do it with a sewing machine or with just needle and thread. And I think I've left James enough time for his no-sew mask.
Oh, yeah. Plenty.
Any
plenty
other
of things.
questions? Are you going to make lots of masks? If I donate the rest of my masks, do I get credit? Hey, I spent 2 days in Ronald McDonald's house one time. Then they gave my son a medication, Ativan, that was supposed to relax him, and instead it set him into an anxiety attack,
Oh,
severe.
Lord.
Oh,
Yeah. And while he's screaming and yelling and thrashing around, he put his face like an inch from my face and said, "Mom, take me home. I don't have cancer." And when they finally got him knocked out, I went back to Ronald McDonald, packed my bags, and stayed the rest of the time next to his side. But he's okay. He's 42 and a multimillionaire. He's done well.
Okay. Now, I'm going to go over some no-sew or a no-sew mask. I found several patterns, but this is the only one that made any sense to me. Basically, it is a mask shaped like this. It's 2 pieces of fabric, simply laid right over the other. You get the slightly pointed edge, put it over your nose, twist it, go over one ear. And that's the way it fits. Now, I would not say this is a long-term solution. That one doesn't fit me very well because I downloaded the medium mask. So here's the large adult mask.
Now,
It'll probably fit a little better.
is that cut on the bias?
It is cut on the bias, so it does stretch a little bit. That's part of it. I'll show you in a minute how I cut it out. But it's easier if you just do it like this. And then it's kind of important to fold that over because that actually works when you have glasses on to kind of keep that from getting up too much. And you can work at it. Now, this one obviously is not terribly stable. You'll only want to wear this in a tight emergency when you really don't have any other mask and you have a few minutes to cut one out. So let me show you a little bit about cutting it out. Okay. Okay. Now I cut an 18-inch square, but I did not cut it on the bias. I cut it with the direction of the thread. Okay, 18-inch square. Then you fold it on the bias once and twice. Okay, that way you only have to cut something out once. Now, this is my pattern that I downloaded, and you got a copy of this, I hope. You can tell I don't like Cheez-Its. Okay, so then I put the pattern down, and here's where I use my pins. I pin on the outside of the pattern. And why do I pin it? Well, that way when I cut, the intervening layers don't shift around. I'll get one easy cut all the way around, and the pattern's not going to be shifted 15 times. So I just pin this down, and you put this part on the single fold. This has the double fold. Put this on the single fold. Okay. So there we have that. And now, we haven't talked about the importance of scissors yet, but as I cut this, Diane, please explain the difference between paper scissors and cloth scissors.
If you use cloth scissors on paper, your mother will be very upset and will spank you. Okay? Paper scissors, if you use scissors for paper, they dull very quickly. If you're going to do a lot of cutting, you want a very good pair of scissors. They're not cheap, but they're very good, and these cut just as well today as when I got them. But paper will dull scissors very quickly, as will polyester. Oh, we didn't talk about how you know if you have cotton instead of polyester.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a minute, because I do want to cover that. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Okay, so now that's why I just literally use a ballpoint pen. Now, if you have a colored piece of cotton, or figured, you might want to use maybe some colored pencils or something, so you can see your outline that you're drawing.
Yeah, I actually keep a set of colored Sharpie pens in my shed here, my she shed, because you're just cutting on the lines.
Yeah, it's simply marking it, and that's what the pins are for. The pins are keeping the fabric in place so that as I cut my lines, there we go. Now I'm going to take one of these and do this, because I'm going to cut this little space out. Now, if you notice, on the original pattern, you had either, on the patterns that I sent you, had either a triangle shape or a heart shape. They're just whatever's most comfortable for your ears. I think between the two, the heart shape is actually more comfortable, because that little indentation becomes a tab that folds over behind your ears and makes it more comfortable. So it's just a matter of comfort is all. Okay, so let's cut that little heart out. And you don't have to be terribly precise, folks. This is not couture dressmaking or anything.
Yep, as I said before, this is not for beauty, it's comfort and safety.
Okay, so, and that is all it takes. Now, if you want this to be a little more permanent, yes, you can use stitch witchery to, you can put it here, in between the layers, and fuse these edges together. That will keep the edges from unraveling, And you can do it underneath here also. That'll keep your edges from unraveling. You'd have to circle this. I will say, I probably would not stitch witchery around the ear things because this will stiffen the fabric and might get a little scratchy behind the ears. So, this now is ready for you to use. If you want to, you can use it right after you cut it. It's that simple. And it does a pretty good job, I have to say, for not being a terribly complicated piece of sewing. You know, I'm not getting a lot of steam in my glasses, and I'm, you know, it's, you know, away from my nostrils, so it's catching a lot of the particulate matter, that kind of thing. I was rather impressed with it, honestly. It's not, I like to have finished edges and all this pretty stuff on mine, and I do for my more permanent ones. But good God, for a real quick 5-10 minute thing, boom, there you go. You got it, you're going. You know, I keep about 10 of those in the car for the emergencies, you know, and you can also, if you wish, do like I did with one of these. Yeah, I stitch witcheried just under the nose. I put a piece of stitch witchery there. And then I cut a piece of filter and literally just laid it in there. Excuse me, I put that under the chin. Put it in there. And I did this on one of the smaller ones, so it doesn't fit as well. But now I have a filter mask. You know, it's not terrible science, but it does work. Right. If you don't even know how to sew with a needle and thread, and all you got is a pair of scissors and some good cloth, then you can still be safe and you can still make a difference. Okay, so yes, let's talk about how to tell the difference between cotton and knit. And Diane, I'm going to turn that one over to you because you're much better at that than I am.
Okay, most likely you're going to have somebody come to you, your aunt, your mother, or next door neighbor, and say, I've got all this fabric I've had for years that I'm never going to use. Would you like to use this for masks? How do you know if it's suitable for a mask? Because I told you before, just go and ask at the fabric store. First of all, you can tell by the feel. With regular quilting cotton, it's really hard to see the holes in the fabric. If you can see the holes, it is not woven tight enough.
Correct.
But then you also want 100% cotton, not polyester, because the polyester is not going to be as absorbent, and you're more likely to get infections. So you cut just a little corner off the fabric, maybe a 1-inch square piece off the fabric, and put a match to it, burn it up. If it immediately turns to ash, you have 100% cotton. If it melts, you have some polyester in it. Polyester will not burn, it will melt. So when you see clothing that says, or fabric that says not for children, oh, there he goes.
Do not try this at home.
Yes.
Okay, that's cotton.
Yeah, that's cotton. Now burn your shirt and what happens?
Oh, no. But yeah, my company bought me, but that's the only polyester I own.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, but
I have one of these halyards from one of our conventions that's polyester, and I can show you, but y'all already know what polyester looked like when it melts, so, you know.
Yeah, if it melts, it'll, instead of burning, then, you know, it's got some polyester, don't use it. And I just can't emphasize enough to keep your mask clean. Now, if you use a halyard material, you can't throw that on the washer and dryer because it will melt, because it's not what it's made for. But you can keep it sterilized by putting it in an oven at about 165 degrees for 20 minutes or so. Now, I live down here in the Florida Panhandle. I sterilize my halyards in my windshield because it gets above 160 degrees during the day in that windshield. And so when I come back from the store, I'll take my halyard and just put it up on the dash and leave it there, and it sterilizes it. If you don't think
But it
gets
sterilizes it for the coronavirus, not for bacterial things that get on
Right.
it, you know, from sweat and
Right.
stuff like that.
again, I don't wear it for 8 hours a day.
Right.
But even if you talk to a doctor or nurse that does surgery, several hours of surgery, they will change their mask every hour or so during the surgery.
Right.
Because it just, you can't keep it clean at all otherwise.
Now, there is one type of face protection, I should call it, that we aren't going to show you how, but we can discuss, and that's the plastic face shields.
Right.
Those, I talked to my physician about this the other day because I went in for a physical. So we were discussing, and you know, what's going on, and you know, I asked them, I'm going to be doing this mask presentation. What would you say is the best, most effective one? And Diane has basically almost word for word said everything she said. Thank you, Diane. And so the only thing she said was, you know, teachers and people who need to be masked all day, like health professionals, really one of the most effective things is sometimes in conjunction with a mask, wearing the plastic face shields that, you know, basically, you know, just have a big plastic thing here with wrapped around your head and stuff. That's a little beyond our capabilities for this mask making party, but it is something that you might want to consider for some of your friends who are teachers or whatever. And I will do my best to find some do-it-yourself ways, and I'll discuss with Diane also if we can't find something for you on that issue.
Can I talk quickly about that, James?
Absolutely.
Vinyl covering. You buy it at Walmart. Thick. Cut a piece and glue it with a glue gun to a baseball cap. And you know, what size you cut it will depend on what you're doing. The other, and see there's the vinyl covering. It's available in medium and deluxe. That's just how thick it is. And you can make it. Now, the reason I have it is I made some masks for speech therapists. Because a speech therapist, the kids have to be able to see her mouth. And I ended up making 4 masks and ended up with 4 speech therapists that took the masks. There are patterns online for windowed masks, and there's several of them. Also, if you are dealing with someone who's deaf, who needs to be able to see your mouth. And so a lot of people in the deaf community have them. But again, it's just get it down at Walmart. It's not very expensive. And make your own see-through mask. How's that?
Thank you, Diane. I really appreciate that. Because, I mean, our whole purpose here is not just to teach you how to make masks, but to teach you how to be safe and promote the safety. So, you know, we want to cover as much as possible on not just mask making, but safety techniques. While you're making your mask, wash your hands, and wash your hands once again.
Mm-hmm.
And make sure you're working with freshly washed and laundered material. You know, your sewing machine hopefully is clean. Your hands are clean while you're sewing. You know, all that stuff you need to take into account, and just make sure that everything you're working with is not sterile necessarily, but somewhat clean. And I guess that wraps up what I have to say. What about you, Diane?
I think I've gone through all that I needed to. The big thing is to just have fun while you're doing it.
Yes.
You know, I see so many people complain about masks and why do I have to wear a mask into Walmart? You know, every store, every restaurant has a sign that says no shoes, no shirt, no service. And I don't think it's right. I should have to wear a shirt into Walmart. Right? It's the
Many
same.
don't.
It's the same thing. The mask is there for all of our safety. I've unfortunately lost 5 friends to COVID, and our little community, which was the last county in Florida to get a COVID case, has now lost what, 3 people? 4, actually 4. Nobody's announced it, but because my husband worked for the sheriff's office for 35 years, he has friends. And there was another case 2 days ago, someone that we lost to COVID. So anyhow, it's out there and it's for real and it's not a fake and it's not political. Keep safe. Please keep safe. Back to you, James.
Well, thank you, Diane. We really appreciate your service, not just to the Florida community, but now to the Virginia community.
Yes, indeed.
You are now a nationwide mask maker.
Including Maryland.
Master mask maker extraordinaire.
Oh,
Yes.
thank you. Thank you.
We really appreciate you taking the time out.
All right.
Both you, James and Diane, to
Sure.
Yeah,
help us
you-
today.
You guys did a great job. Thank you. You were very thorough in your explanations, and your little anecdotes were cute too. And thank you so much for all you did.
Well, you're welcome.
And if you need to contact me for anything, James has my email, Liz has my email, the rest of the
Oh,
world has
absolutely.
email.
You can pepper us with questions like, how do I do this? How do I tell which end of the sewing machine to use? That kind of thing. We can help.
Did anyone wonder what happened to my finger, or was that too obvious?
I
No.
thought you were just biting your nails.
No.
Oh,
It wasn't easy to see.
Oh, that was your
Yes.
sewing machine accident.
oh.
Girls?
No. That
Oh,
was
no?
my husband's 100+ pound German Shepherd, and he accidentally bit my arm. And in
Oh.
trying to get him off me, I apparently broke my finger. But this wonderful hospital we have in Blountstown said there was nothing wrong with it. So 6 weeks later, I see a specialist, and he says, "Well, I don't know if I can fix it now."
Oh,
That's the dangers of living in.
Yeah. I won't tell you my horror stories with that hospital either.
Oh well,
Okay, so,
they killed my husband's sister. They killed my
Oh.
sister-in-law. But that's-
Yeah.
I need to get to another meeting. Thanks again.
thank
Well,
you.
thank you, Kara.
Okay.
And
You guys be
Yes.
well.
All right.
we will wrap this up. I guess we can
Yes, sir.
finish up recording, and
Yes.
we will circle back around with everybody to make sure that you understand what's going on. You have any questions or whatever, but thank you so much.
Yes.
Really.
One
Thank
thing
you.
one thing I want to mention is this recording will be on the chapter website. We have a specific page for the mask sewing contest. The mask sewing contest runs until October the 16th. You can find details on our website. So this recording will also be on that website. The different patterns that Diane and James spoke about, that will be on the website as well. I don't want to forget to mention our 2 sponsors for the mask sewing contest, and that would be Heritage Landscape Services and TRC Engineering. So thank you very much for sponsoring. Are there any questions before we wrap up?
Okay.
All right.
All right.
Well, thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Yes,
Thank you. Thank you.
So this will end our recording, and I hope everyone has a wonderful day.
Thank you. Goodbye, folks.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you, James, for getting your friend Diane to come. Thank you.